In the world of typography and design, there are countless terms that are necessary for any beginner designer to know. So in this ultimate guide to basic typography, we've gathered some of the more essential terms you're going to be happy to know right at the start of your typography journey. I'll be going through some of the more basic misunderstood terms and explaining some of the most essential typesetting details. So I'm Abby Esparza with Envato Tuts Plus. Let's jump right into it. One of the most common mistakes when talking about type is mixing up the terms typeface and font. To put it more simply, a typeface is a group of characters that share a common DNA. For example, Ampersands is a different typeface from Rockwell STD, where a font is a particular set of glyphs within a typeface. For instance, 12-point Franklin Gothic Light is a different font from the 14-point Franklin Gothic Light. Nowadays, however, these words are often used interchangeably. When type was first invented, all fonts were designed as Roman. It wasn't until the early 16th century that italic fonts were introduced. Italics, or true italics, are angled typefaces that are strongly influenced by calligraphy. Their slanted anatomy mimics the organic movement of cursive letters. Italics that are specifically designed for their matching Roman fonts are similar in shape, with the exception of a few characters. Oblique fonts, on the other hand, are less complex. None of the glyphs in a oblique font goes through any cursive transformation. When included in a block of text, oblique fonts don't tend to contrast quite enough with their Roman counterparts. So in cases like this, you'll want to stick to true italics. Morris Fuller Benton was a proponent of creation of large type families between the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The most common font weights you can find in a typeface are regular and bold. Some typefaces like New Haas Unica include extensive weights. Having such a wide range of weights in a single font gives you the ability to create a hierarchy in a page layout without having to reach to different fonts. Let's be honest, when you download and install a font, maybe you are left wondering if you use the right font file. We've all been there, and at the very least question what the real difference is between the different font files that tend to pop up. Let's talk file types. These were files developed by Adobe in the mid-1980s. A computer would need two separate files, one for on-screen display and a second one for printing. On top of it all, the file could only hold a maximum of 220 glyphs. Next up, the TrueType font. These files were developed by both Apple and Microsoft in the early 1990s. This type of file renders the outlines of each character through a hinting process to achieve a high level of legibility on low-res devices. But incorporating hinting into the font became time-consuming. In comes the OpenType font. These files were developed by Adobe and Microsoft, also in the late 1990s. These fonts support Unicode, meaning that one OpenType file can contain even more than 65,000 glyphs. This type of file is also cross-platform, so the same file can be used for both a Mac and Windows computer. You might have noticed that some numbers are differently set from typeface to typeface. Let's take a look at the different figure styles and just when you might use them. Lining figures are usually the default figures you'd find in a typeface. The numbers sit on the same baseline as the rest of the characters. These figures look great next to capital letters because the height tends to be similar, if not the exact same. Now, old-style figures, or non-lining, are numbers that extend above and below the baseline. This style looks great if you're using it in a paragraph of text, as visually, the varying height blends in nicely with the upper and lowercase letters. Next up, superscript and subscript. Superscript and subscript figures are smaller versions of full-size numerals. They're commonly used in footnotes and endnotes, cents and pricing, diagonal fractions, and chemical notations. The word ligatures comes from Latin, meaning to tie. This is because ligatures tie two or more letters into a single character to help with kerning or simply for decorative purposes. Hyphens and dashes are punctuation marks that are often misunderstood and misused. See, the hyphen is a short mark used to hyphenate a word, or at the end of the line to break a word. Hyphens are commonly used to separate digits in a phone number or to join compound words such as long term. Then you have the end dash, which is longer than a hyphen. It is used to indicate a duration of time, often replacing the prepositions of to and through. And finally, the M dash is the longest dash. It is often used in place of commas, parentheses, or colons. M dashes are also used to indicate a strong break in the structure of a sentence, or a change of thought or emphasis. Now we have one of the fanciest characters in a typeface, the ampersand. This symbol is a stylized depiction of et, which is a Latin word for and. Designers often use the opportunity to design ampersands as a way to show off, as it can be a symbol that contains lots of character and personality. You can substitute the word and for an ampersand in certain instances: headlines, titles, and branding, or for connecting words in a list. Legibility refers to the anatomy of a typeface and the common DNA that those characters share. It is related to a reader's ability to differentiate one letter from the next. There are multiple elements that contribute to a legible typeface, such as character width, weight, counters, serifs, and stroke contrasts. Readability, on the other hand, refers to just how clear and easy it is to read words in a block of text. Depending on the DNA of a typeface, designers can make certain decisions for its readability on a page: font size, line length, and leading, just to name a few. Line length is the width of a column where type is set, and it's usually measured by the number of characters on a single line. For copy text, a line length of between 45 and 75 characters tends to be optimal. Leading, also called line spacing, is the vertical space between each line of text and is measured from baseline to baseline. Depending on the typeface you are using, you might need more or less line spacing. Darker typefaces need more line spacing because they tend to make a page look darker and require more breathing room. Also known as letter spacing. Tracking is the act of adding horizontal space between characters. Lowercase characters require some tracking in long forms of text to fix things like rags, orphans, and widows. More on those soon. Alignment refers to the text placement on a page, and it is one of the first decisions you'll make at the beginning of your project. Each alignment style has different applications and its own challenges to make the text readable. The four main alignment styles are: first, flush left. If you are typesetting large amounts of text, flush left is a great option for languages that are read from left to right. Use centerline for shorter amounts of text, like headlines, formal invitations, and introductory copy. Avoid using the style for long copy, as it can become difficult to read due to the uneven edges on both sides. Then there is flush right. Flush right is common in languages that read right to left, like Hebrew. You can also use this style for a few lines at a time, and whenever necessary, for things like pull quotes, sidebars, and notes. And finally, justified. Justified text is aligned to both sides simultaneously. This style is most common in books and newspapers, mainly to save space and fit as many characters as possible on one line. You'll want to use hyphenation with this style to avoid wide gaps between words. The uneven edge on the opposite side of a flush left, flush right, or centerline text is called a rag. When setting type, pay attention to the ragged edge shapes, as they sometimes can be distracting if not set properly. You can correct rags manually by breaking lines when necessary or hyphenating words. A good rag will go in and out in small increments. Rivers are the big gaps between words, usually caused by justified text. Use a combination of tracking and hyphenation when needed to eliminate rivers. A slightly tighter track will also allow you to fit more characters on one single line. Orphans are the isolated lines created when a paragraph begins on the last line of a column or page. A widow, on the other hand, is the last line of a paragraph that appears at the beginning of the next column or page. Both of these issues cause extensive white space around the lines of text. Edit copy where necessary. If editing is not an option, however, try typesetting previous paragraphs meticulously. Again, it's all about the readers. And that's it. clarified a few words, touched on figures and symbols, and explained some indispensable typesetting terms. It's important to learn the do's and don'ts of typography. You'll understand why some typefaces work at a small point size or why text is readable in a wide column. But with all that being said, I do think rules were made to be broken. So experiment and think outside the box. If you're looking to learn even more about all things design, why not check out some of the other excellent tutorials that Envato Plus has to offer. If you like this video and would like to see more, consider giving us a like and even subscribing if you haven't already. And don't forget to click the little bell icon to be notified of all new videos, including tips, tricks, and tutorials. Happy designing! See you next time.